Ladies and gentlemen, have you ever felt the room stiffen when someone dares to speak a truth too piercing, too raw, too real? Have you seen eyes flicker with discomfort when a mind, sharp and unafraid, cuts through the fog of lies we've all quietly agreed to live within? That moment, tense, undeniable, that is the ripple of intelligence threatening the still waters of societal comfort. We live in a world that praises intellect on the surface, but fears its true consequences beneath. Society doesn't truly fear the foolish. They are predictable, manageable, even entertaining. No, what shakes the ground beneath our feet is the person who sees, not just looks but sees, through the illusion, through the performance, through the facade we've all helped build. These people cannot be bought with empty words or manipulated by shiny distractions. They read between the lines, listen to what is not said, and question what everyone else blindly accepts. Intelligence is dangerous not because it is arrogant or cold, but because it is disobedient. It refuses to worship tradition for tradition's sake. It questions why we build walls, why we kneel to power, why we repeat the same mistakes and call it legacy. Such people are labeled difficult, radical, mad. But what society really means is uncontrollable. And control is the great obsession of every institution, governments, corporations, religions, schools. When someone walks in with a mind that can't be caged, a spirit that won't conform, the system panics. History has always whispered the same truth. Those who think too clearly are the first to be silenced. They are branded heretics, rebels, outcasts, not because they are wrong, but because they threaten the carefully polished mirror in which society admires itself. It's not just that intelligent people think differently, it's that their vision exposes, and what is exposed can no longer be denied. But why such fear? Because intelligence is unpredictable. The intelligent mind does not move in straight lines. It dances between logic and intuition, shatters boxes, sees patterns where others see chaos, and what cannot be predicted cannot be controlled. Society finds comfort in the familiar, traditions, roles, categories. The intelligent person slips through these like smoke through fingers, reminding us of how fragile our structures truly are. This is why intelligence disrupts power. It is a silent revolution. One voice questioning a rule is more dangerous than 1,000 fists raised in blind rebellion. The rulers fear the thinker more than the fighter, because the thinker awakens others. The fighter can be fought, the thinker must be understood, and understanding him changes everything. That is the true terror of intelligence, not that it stands apart, but that it has the power to awaken. An awakened people do not obey without question. They do not follow blindly. They demand reasons, demand truth, demand better, and that demand threatens the very foundation upon which comfortable lies are built. Yet with all their power, intelligent people are often alone. Why? Because society punishes what it does not understand. The mind that sees the world too clearly is often left staring into shadows, unheard, untrusted, unwelcomed. It is easier to label them strange than to face what they reveal. So they are pushed to the edges, their voices dimmed not by reason, but by fear. But let us not mistake their isolation for weakness. In the quiet corners where society tries to exile them, intelligent people build ideas strong enough to shake empires. They write, they invent, they create, they endure. And when the world finally catches up, it calls them visionary, forgetting how long it feared their sight. The truth is, intelligent people scare society because they demand that it grow. They hold up a mirror not just to power, but to us. They force us to ask, why do I believe what I believe? Who gave me this truth? What if everything I've been taught was meant to keep me in place? These questions are uncomfortable, but they are also the beginning of transformation, and it is this transformation that intelligent minds carry like a flame in the dark. They are the quiet revolutionaries, the architects of future thought. They are feared not because they are cruel, but because they liberate, and liberation begins not in the streets, but in the mind. The threat of unpredictable minds lies at the very heart of society's discomfort with truly intelligent individuals. Intelligence, at its most potent, is not simply about accumulating knowledge or speaking eloquently. It is about perception, insight, and the audacity to explore truths that others overlook or deliberately ignore. These individuals see the world not as they are told it is, but as it actually operates beneath the surface. Their minds are restless, constantly questioning, analyzing, and connecting seemingly unrelated threads. Because of this, they often think in ways that are non-linear, unconventional, and uncontainable. This unpredictability becomes frightening to a society that relies heavily on routine, stability, and clearly defined roles. People find comfort in what they can expect. A mind that defies expectations disrupts that comfort by introducing an element of uncertainty that can no longer be domesticated. Predictability is the tool by which institutions maintain order. Rules, systems, cultural norms. All these constructs depend on most people acting in expected ways. There is a script to follow. Go to school, follow authority, get a job, don't ask too many questions. Believe what the group believes. When someone begins to deviate from this script, especially with intelligence as their compass, it sends tremors through the structure. Society has always used conformity as a survival mechanism, and the intelligent mind that refuses to conform stands as a threat, not because it means harm, but because it proves that there is another way to exist. The unpredictable mind does not need validation from the crowd. It is internally driven, guided by logic, intuition, and a sense of truth that does not require external permission. This independence is unnerving because it cannot be swayed by peer pressure, propaganda, or shallow praise. Furthermore, intelligent people often shift perspectives rapidly. While others may require years to arrive at a certain realization, they leap to conclusions quickly, backed by deep reasoning and nuanced understanding. They don't follow trends. They anticipate them or reject them entirely. They don't engage in arguments for dominance. They engage for discovery. And while most people navigate life by relying on generalizations and groupthink, intelligent individuals thrive in ambiguity and complexity. Their minds are not linear but multidimensional, meaning they often appear unpredictable simply because they operate from a depth most people are unfamiliar with. This creates a gap in comprehension between them and the society they inhabit. That gap is often interpreted as danger. To those in power, this unpredictability is especially intolerable. Authority requires consistency from the masses. Predictable voters, loyal consumers, obedient followers. When an intelligent person challenges the rationale behind a law, a policy, or a social norm, they are not simply being difficult. They are destabilizing the illusion that these systems are infallible. Because intelligent individuals ask, why must it be this way? And more dangerously, who benefits from this remaining the way it is? Power is most comfortable when its methods are unquestioned. The intelligent, unpredictable mind not only questions, but compels others to question as well. This creates a ripple effect. One thinker inspires another, and soon the spell of passive obedience begins to break. That, more than anything, is what society and its guardians fear. This fear manifests in subtle but persistent forms. Intelligent people are often labeled as arrogant, cynical, or too intense. They are told they think too much, or that they're too deep for their own good. These are not neutral observations. They are warnings disguised as advice. They are social mechanisms designed to pressure the intelligent mind back into predictable patterns, but the mind that truly sees cannot unsee. Once a person learns to think outside the system, they are no longer easily managed. They may still participate in society, but on their own terms and with an awareness that distances them from the naive belief in the system's absolute authority. The unpredictability of intelligence also means that these individuals are not easily classified. Society loves categories: liberal or conservative, academic or artist, logical or emotional. Intelligent minds often resist these binaries. They can be both analytical and creative, both compassionate and confrontational, both visionary and grounded. This complexity frustrates a world that prefers black and white simplicity over gray areas that demand deeper thought. When you cannot place someone in a category, you cannot easily predict their loyalties, their actions, or their influence. And what cannot be predicted is always viewed as a potential threat. But it is not the intelligent person's intention to be threatening. It is simply the byproduct of their nature. Their unpredictability doesn't stem from chaos, but from clarity. While others follow the well-worn path, they forge their own, not out of rebellion, but because they see a different truth. And it is precisely this clarity, this refusal to be boxed in or tamed, that makes society so uneasy in their presence. Disruption of power structures is perhaps the most potent reason intelligent individuals are feared by society. Power, in all its forms, political, institutional, cultural, depends on the maintenance of a specific order, one that favors predictability, obedience, and repetition. The foundation of this order is upheld not by strength alone, but by belief. Belief in its legitimacy, its righteousness, and its necessity. Intelligent people, by nature, do not accept these beliefs without scrutiny. They probe, dissect, and test the assumptions that others absorb unconsciously. They ask dangerous questions: who made this rule? Who benefits from this system? What is being hidden behind tradition, behind authority, behind the illusion of normal? These questions are not merely academic. They are acts of intellectual rebellion, because when enough people begin to ask them, the scaffolding that holds power in place begins to tremble. Intelligent individuals are not impressed by symbols of power. Titles, uniforms, rituals, hierarchies, these are all designed to command automatic respect and discourage challenge. But to a discerning mind, these are just social constructs, often used to mask incompetence or manipulate the masses. Intelligent people look beyond appearances. They analyze behavior, motives, consequences. They see the strings behind the puppets. This ability to see clearly through the theatrical display of authority is deeply unsettling to those who depend on that display to maintain control. It exposes the vulnerability of even the most well-protected systems, and it forces those in charge to confront a truth they would rather bury: that power is sustained not by inherent virtue, but by the collective agreement of those it governs. Break that agreement, and the whole edifice begins to crack. What truly threatens power is not violence, but thought. Violence is chaotic but manageable. It can be suppressed, criminalized, or crushed under the weight of law. Thought, however, is fluid. It slips through bars, spreads across pages, infects minds, and inspires change that cannot be undone. Intelligent people plant these seeds of thought everywhere they go. They challenge norms in conversation, disrupt narratives in classrooms, subvert propaganda through satire, and expose contradictions in institutions. They do not scream for attention. They provoke reflection. And reflection is dangerous in a society that survives on unquestioned loyalty and superficial truths. When a population begins to reflect, to really think, it becomes harder to manipulate. That is the beginning of the end for those whose power depends on mental submission. The intelligent person also understands that power does not always wear a crown. It can wear a lab coat, a priest's robe, a CEO suit, a professor's tweed jacket. In every sphere of life, there exists a hierarchy, a gatekeeping system that rewards conformity and punishes deviation. Whether in politics, religion, science, or culture, the structures of influence rely on consensus, the agreement that this is how things are done. Intelligent individuals rarely accept how things are done as sacred. They question the origin, the logic, the outcome. They point out what others overlook, sometimes because they have been trained not to see it. This makes them agitators in the eyes of those who benefit from the status quo, not because they are hostile, but because they insist on clarity. They cannot be silenced with tradition or distracted by decorum. They demand substance, and that demand reveals the emptiness behind many revered institutions. This disruption becomes especially threatening when intelligence is coupled with influence. A solitary thinker can be ignored or ridiculed, but an intelligent person who can communicate, who can inspire others to question, to doubt, to see differently, is a revolutionary force. Throughout history, we see examples of such individuals who, simply by speaking or writing, ignited revolutions of thought that eventually reshaped nations. They didn't necessarily pick up weapons, they picked up ideas. And ideas, when spoken with clarity and courage, have a way of tearing down the walls that brute force could never touch. That is why power fears intelligence. It fears its permanence, its depth, and its reach. Intelligent people often do not seek to destroy power for its own sake. They seek to redefine it. They believe power should serve, not dominate. They envision systems built on justice rather than fear, on merit rather than manipulation. But even this vision is threatening, because it implies that the current holders of power may be unworthy of it. When intelligent people propose new paradigms, new forms of leadership, new economic models, new values, they aren't just offering alternatives. They're revealing that other possibilities exist. And if there are other possibilities, then the current system is not inevitable. It is not eternal, it is simply one choice among many, and the realization that society chose a flawed system, that it continues to choose it every day, forces an unbearable reflection. The fear of intelligent people, then, is not rooted in what they are, but in what they awaken in others. They awaken critical thought, moral discomfort, intellectual courage. They remind people that their silence, their compliance, their refusal to question, these are all acts that sustain the very power structures they may secretly resent. This awakening does not come with a parade. It comes like a whisper, like a virus of the mind. It is slow, but it spreads, and once it takes root, it is almost impossible to reverse. That is why intelligence is dangerous to power. Not because it marches with flags, but because it dares to imagine something more honest, more human, and more just. Power can crush rebellion, but it cannot erase an idea whose time has come. And intelligent people, whether applauded or feared, are always the ones who carry those ideas forward. Because intelligent individuals often think and perceive in ways far outside the norm, they are frequently met not with admiration, but with isolation, suspicion, and even hostility. Society has never quite known what to do with those who see too much. They are the observers, the analyzers, the ones who pick up on subtleties that others overlook or dismiss. While many people live within the boundaries of accepted thought and behavior, intelligent individuals often find themselves standing outside of those boundaries, looking in. And this external perspective, this detachment, is both a gift and a burden. They see the flaws in the system, the inconsistencies in people's values, the contradictions in public morality. They see the gap between what society claims to be and what it actually is. But instead of being praised for their clarity, they are met with fear, because society would often rather silence the mirror than face the reflection it shows. This misunderstanding begins early. In childhood, intelligent children may be labeled as too intense, too curious, or too sensitive. They ask questions that make adults uncomfortable. They challenge the answers they are given. They want depth where others offer surface. As they grow older, these qualities, far from being nurtured, are often discouraged. Schools, workplaces, and even social groups tend to reward conformity over curiosity, obedience over insight. Intelligent people who question too much or who express ideas that don't fit the mainstream narrative are subtly or overtly pushed to the margins. Their ideas are seen as impractical, naive, or dangerous, and so many of them learn to remain silent, to observe quietly rather than speak, to retreat inward rather than fight for a place in a world that does not understand them. The emotional weight of this isolation can be immense. Intelligent individuals often experience a deep sense of alienation, not just because they are misunderstood, but because they cannot unsee what they've come to understand. They feel the dissonance in conversations filled with superficiality. They sense the unease behind people's practiced smiles. They recognize the societal patterns that repeat harm under the guise of progress. And yet, when they speak of these things, they are often met with blank stares, nervous laughter, or subtle rejections. It is not that society overtly attacks intelligent people. It is that it gradually excludes them through indifference, discomfort, and dismissal. They are made to feel like outsiders not because of what they lack, but because of what they possess in excess: depth, awareness, perception. This social exile extends into relationships. Intelligent people often struggle to connect deeply with others, not because they are arrogant or antisocial, but because their values and interests differ so dramatically from the norm. They seek conversations that go beyond the surface, relationships rooted in authenticity, and environments where growth and honesty are valued over comfort and routine. But these are hard to find in a world where many are conditioned to avoid discomfort and protect their illusions. As a result, intelligent individuals may feel lonely even in a crowd. They may find themselves surrounded by people but unable to truly connect. This emotional solitude is often misunderstood by others as aloofness or superiority, when in reality it stems from a profound sense of disconnect. And yet, despite this loneliness, most intelligent people do not lose their empathy. On the contrary, their deep understanding often gives them a heightened sense of compassion. They see the pain behind people's defenses, the fear beneath their hostility, the confusion within their anger. But this emotional intelligence can also become a source of suffering. They absorb the collective tension of a society that does not want to face its own contradictions. They carry the weight of awareness in a world that often chooses ignorance as a form of peace. And they do so quietly because they know that speaking too openly about what they see only deepens their isolation. This tragic cycle of seeing too much, speaking too clearly, being misunderstood, and then withdrawing, creates a world in which some of the most insightful minds are the least heard. Society continues to celebrate loud confidence over quiet wisdom, popularity over principle, and entertainment over enlightenment. The truly intelligent, unwilling to betray their own minds for the sake of acceptance, often choose solitude over superficiality. And while they may not always be visible, they are always observing, writing, creating, thinking, and waiting for a world that may one day be ready to hear them. What society fails to understand is that these individuals are not enemies. They are not threats to peace, but to pretense. They are not trying to break the world apart. They are trying to wake it up, but waking up is hard. It means leaving behind comforting delusions. It means questioning what we were taught to believe. It means growing, and growth, as every intelligent person knows, is painful. That is why the world resists them. That is why they walk alone.